The Blue Jackets haven't taken a goalie earlier than the 5th round since 2017. Should that change this year? We're talking to a goalie expert to find out on today's episode of Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Like I said at the top of the show, we are going to be talking about some draft-eligible goalie prospects. There's a handful of interesting names that we could look at in this episode, and I thought let's go to the experts. Let's bring back Greg Balloch, who we talked to yesterday about Elvis Merzlikins, Tarasov, Jet Grieve, Sergei Ivanov, and he's an expert in goalie scouting. Let's say he does all of the goalie scouting over at Elite Prospect. So I thought, hey, let's ask him. Who should the Blue Jackets be looking at in this draft? Should they draft a goalie? How early should they draft a goalie? So I'm just going to get right into my conversation with Greg because he is much smarter than I am and has much more interesting things to say. I want to talk a little bit about kind of goalie prospects now. We talked a little bit about kind of like scouting earlier, but I wanted to kind of start off with something a little bit more general of like you've scouted a lot of goalies. What kind of things do you look at? Kind of what's your first thing on the checklist for if you're watching a goalie?
Well, first thing first is always the skating ability of the goaltender. And especially, like I said, if they're a little undersized, you can't be undersized and a average to poor skater. Like it's just, you will not progress to the next level with that combination. So that's probably the first thing I always look at is just, well, can they skate? Can they move? And, is their ability to go from point A to come point B and come set? Is like, what's their ability to do that? Because a lot of goalies will at the younger age just drift. And it's that ability to not only start your motion, but stop your motion and come set, because a lot of tracking and ability to see the puck comes down to your ability to steady your head and steady your ability to stop and, stare that puck down and actually be able to track it with your eyes. So those are, foundational things in my eyes. So that's what I probably look for first is, I think with skaters too, it probably comes down to their skating ability a lot of the time when the first thing the scouts look at.
Yeah, for sure. I know I play beer league goalie, so very much not on the same level, but legitimately one of the most helpful coaching points I got was turn your head the direction you're moving.
Yep.
Because then your head is set.
There's three. Your motion also. There's a pattern you want to do every time. So it's head, hands, feet.
Yeah.
So those are the order of operations for a goaltender. Your first thing to move is always your head, and then your hands will follow, and then naturally your feet come with you because everything else in your body is going towards that direction. So it all starts with your head. It all starts with your eyes, and yeah, if you don't have those basic foundations down, it's hard for me to look at you seriously as a goalie prospect if you don't have those things.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about some kind of specific goalie prospects that are coming up in 2024, because I think Ivanov was I want to say a 2022 draft pick. I'm just going to double check that. Yeah. So they didn't draft one. Oh, they did draft a guy last year. But he's not, I think he's just kind of a guy that they threw a flyer on. I cannot remember his name. Swedish kid. But is there anyone?
Melvin Strahl. I just had your thing
guy.
There, yeah.
I've got a lot of my listeners are kind of clamoring for the Blue Jackets to draft a goalie in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you been paying the most attention to this season? Is there anyone that like really stands out as this guy is going to be someone in the NHL? Obviously, it's so tough to predict, but I feel like is there a Jesper Wallstedt, for example, in this year's draft class?
Yes. So there is a clear, I would say, top 4 in this year's class. And then there's a bunch of other guys that I would absolutely love to take flyers on and see what they turn into. So, generally you're going to get about 20 to 25 goalies taken per draft. And yeah, so I'd say the top 4 or 5 this year are definitely, I would consider guys that might turn into starters in the league and at least have a chance to become starters in the league. And the big number one for me is a guy, Ryerson Leenders, playing in the OHL for Mississauga. And he's a guy who's been on the top of my list for a couple of years now in terms of this age group. And he's one of the top goalies in the OHL already, even as a draft eligible goaltender. And, not a huge guy. He's only 6'1", so he's only a little bit taller than Jet Greaves was. You're just talking about him being undersized. Well, but he's got such good high end ability, and his ceiling is extremely good. So, he's not flashy. So if you're expecting, an Askarov or a Wallstedt kind of style, he's not that. Like, I would compare him more to like a Cam Talbot, Martin Jones, like a very understated, calmer sort of style that he plays, but extremely high end puck tracking ability, and his skating is so good. His post integration, so when he uses his post and moves side to side, it's better than NHL goalies that I've seen right now. So you're not going to get those little squeakers as often, and he's so explosive off his post that he's one to watch in my opinion. So he's kind of the clear number one. If I'm gonna be on the team that gets the first goalie off the board, he's the guy I'm going out and saying, that guy to me has the best chance to be a starting goaltender in the NHL.
Honestly, I feel like I've seen a lot of chaotic goalies in the Blue Jackets organization, and I've watched a fair amount of Askarov this season. So, like, a not flashy, steady shot-stopping goalie sounds kind of nice right about now. So you talked a little bit about kind of his game. Where do you see him? Is he a guy that you think should be argued to maybe go at, like, people keep talking about goalies going in the first round, and it's so rare. And every year they're like, this guy might go in the top 10. And then I think Sebastian Cossa was the first guy taken at 15, I want to say, in that draft.
It was higher than that, wasn't it? Was it 10? It might have been 15.
I think it was 15 because there was a lot of talk about how the Senators might take him at 10, and they took Tyler Boucher instead, which is a whole other thing that we won't get into right now. Is Leenders a guy that you think teams are going to argue, hey, we should take this guy in the first round, or is he probably a second round or later guy?
It's looking like it's a fairly deep draft from what I understand. Like, the high end skill might not be there like it has been in previous years, but I feel like he might get pushed into the second round for sure. We had him ranked in the 40s at Elite Prospects, like 41st is where we had him. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he went late first round, but he's projecting to be more of an early second round kind of range, which is where you see a lot of the top goalies will go in most draft years. So, yeah, he's not, like I said, he's not a guy that jumps off the page. He's not going to woo the traditional scouts too often if you show them the highlight tape on him. Like, he makes highlight reel saves, but he's, for the most part, he makes his bread and butter on, his bread and butter is his consistency and his ability to stop the puck, like you said, on a consistent basis. His details are a lot better than you see at a goalie that age. So that isn't exactly going to excite a lot of GMs, I think. But for a goalie scout and for people that are pushing for people at the draft table to take goalies, yeah, I think early second round would be. And the other thing too is you don't want to take if you might think a guy is a high first round talent, but if no other team is going to take him that high, then it's where you think he'll slot in, right? It's the kind of the mind game that you have to play at the end of the day, which makes it so tough to project.
Chicken, yeah.
Yeah, so I think early second round is where I would have him.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys that the NHL.com has on their North American goalie board, which I don't know if we talked about this on mic or off mic, but I don't like that they split them.
Yeah.
Between North American goalies and non-North American goalies, and for skaters as well. I don't think it's helpful. Carter George is at the top of their list for North American goalies. What can you tell me about him?
I like him a lot too. So he's in that kind of top 4 that I think are separate from the rest of the pack. He's up there as well. I have him as my number 3rd ranked guy. He's a bit boxier, if for Blue Jackets fans out there, I would, compare him to almost like an Anton Forsberg sort of style, just in the way that he plays. Again, not an overly huge guy. He's listed, only 6 feet tall, so he's not going to jump off the page in terms of his frame. but he's another guy who skates well. He does a lot of the little details, like his play on the post, very refined for a goaltender of his age, which is a huge green flag that I like to look for. And the other thing that stands out about him is he moves the puck better than any other goalie in this draft class. He is so good at sending his team on breakouts and just handling the puck with calmness behind the net, moving the puck around. Not something that's going to make or break your ability to play in the NHL, but man, like it's
nice to have.
Such a nice. It's shocking. Like one of the first games I scouted of him were just like how immediately I'm not a guy who looks for puck handling a lot. Like honestly, like I'll watch a guy and how he handles his breakouts and whether or not he's able to send his team up the ice every once in a while. But for him, it's like you are drawn to how much he handles the puck and how well he handles it. Like it's incredible.
This is a kid that's going to score goals, is what you're telling me.
Yes. So it's he's one to watch for in terms of that. That's, like I said, at the end of the day, it comes down to stopping the puck, not being able to move it up the ice. But it's a huge bonus for his game, and that is something that kind of the old school scouts I could see, oohing and awing at, because you can see some of the breakouts that he sends his team on. Like he is. If he was in the NHL right now, he might be one of the top 10 puck handling goaltenders. Like he is that good at moving the puck.
That's always fun. Again, it's not something that, like you said, it's not going to make or break a goalie. And I think Mike Smith is probably the biggest example of this, but it is still really fun to watch Mike Smith just kind of just go wild and be like, you know what? I don't need you guys. I'm gonna clear this puck myself, which is it's fun if it's not necessary. In a minute, we're going to talk more to Greg about some draft-eligible prospects, but first, I've got to tell you about Game Time, because I spent a bunch of time in San Jose during the season, and Game Time is the only ticketing app that I use to buy Sharks tickets. I used to use other ticketing services, found Game Time, and haven't looked back. The fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theatre events near you. They've got killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee, which means if you find tickets in your section and row for less somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of difference. They give you complete peace of mind with your purchase. There's no secret fees. All in prices show your total upfront, so you know that you're going to get a great deal before you check out, and it takes you 2 taps to buy tickets. Just open the app, find the game, boom, done. Everybody wins. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Yeah.
One more North American guy I want to talk about is an American guy currently playing for the NTDP. In Nicolas Kempf, who's ranked as second on the NHL's list, but taking a look at his stats, they're not outstanding. What's up with that? Why is he ranked so highly if his stats are he has an 897 in 27 games with the U.S. national under-18 team?
Not the direction I thought you were going in there. I thought you were going to throw John Parsons at me, who was the other national team program goaltender, who I have ranked in the top 10. But yeah, Kempf was a head scratcher for me when I first saw the tape on him. He's ranked number 2 in North America, and he's committed to Notre Dame. But I didn't get it, honestly. I don't see the appeal that other scouts apparently have. And for me, the first red flag that pops up is his skating, and it's not the best. Maybe I'm just spoiled because we just saw Trey Augustine come out of their program, and he is an exceptional skater. He is one of the best skating goaltenders I've seen come out of into the draft in recent years. And then we get Kempf, who I honestly don't like any bit of how he skates, whether he's standing or in his butterfly position. Like even his steals and pushes off the post to me are soft. I understand that the national team development program has that, air around it, that it does produce great goaltenders a lot of the time, and America is another really good hotbed for goalies right now. But yeah, I didn't see a ton of areas of his game that stood out to me as exceptional or you're just grasping for something that you can point at to be like, oh yeah, there's what I can talk about when this guy's names come up. There's nothing. Like even his rebound decisions sometimes when he handles pucks off his hands, it's like, where are you going? Like, he puts it into the worst areas, and just like, it's, to me, that decision there to have him 2 is just, there's a lot of weird decisions on that central scouting list a lot of the years, but
and like obviously the draft rankings are not the be all and end all, and it's very rarely I find the draft, like especially when you start to look at like the NHL.com ones and the Bob McKenzie ones, and it's not ranked in order of who's the best, it's ranked in who's in order, who's likely to go in what order,
based on their knowledge.
Since you mentioned John Parsons, let's talk about him a little bit. He's the other NTDP goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you, his numbers are similar, why do you like him so much better than Kempf?
Well, he gets like the post integration I was talking about, moving side to side, and his seals are just way more refined than Kemp's. I find. I think he's closer to what you'd expect out of a high end prospect in terms of how he's able to move on his posts and transition off his posts. I think he's got that explosiveness that you look for, and yeah, like I said, he's a guy who I do have in my top 10. He still doesn't come without a few flaws. He's a little aggressive at times. A lot of younger goaltenders have that, youthfulness, that aggressiveness to their game that they still need to work out, and they still need to understand situations a bit more, which, when to reel it in and understand, I could lose my net here, I better, take a step back. They just don't have that sense yet. So there's still a bit of that to his game, but very fixable, something that's not, like I said, a huge red flag, something that generally works itself out over time. It's just a way, more of a mental thing in terms of how you approach the game more than anything that these kids need to learn. So he kind of falls on that side of the spectrum. So that's why he slips a little bit further down the list, but still, like if he's in the top 10, I think he's a guy with high end potential, and he has more to give, I think, than his numbers suggest, as opposed to what I saw in Kempf, which was the numbers sort of backed up what I was seeing a little bit.
I thought it was interesting that both goalies were kind of a similar, like they've split games. I think one of them's played 27, one of them's played 28. They've both got similar save percentages, and like it's not even like Kempf is 6'6" or whatever, because I know that definitely plays into a lot of a lot of draft rankings. Is this guy big? Big is good.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting that they're kind of on a similar, and I think that's why. I think it's important to remember, and I'm guilty of this as well, is not getting bogged down by just the base stats, because there's so much more to it than that.
Honestly, I don't really look at them at all. Like I'll glance at it when I'm going over their page, but yeah, to me it comes down to those key points that you look for in a guy's game, and Parsons has that frame too. Like he is bigger, right? He's got the 6'4" frame that you look for, so that will appeal to a lot of scouts and goalie coaches, because they want to work him into their system and say, hey, I'll turn him into something. And I think he's got the ability for sure.
Yeah. Let's flip over to the European goalies. The first guy I want to talk about is Kim Saarinen, Finnish guy. Mm-hmm. He's their number 1 ranked European goalie. 6'4", playing in the Finnish junior league. What can you tell me about him?
Well, he's very balanced, another good skater. So, most of the guys at the top of this list are pretty good skaters, and he's another one of them. He doesn't really stretch out too often in either direction. He likes to keep within the frame of the net, and that's when he's on his game. When he's tracking well and he's staying within the frame of the net, he doesn't have that youthful exuberance that I was talking about with Parsons. He's able to hone that a bit more, I find, which is a very good sign for somebody at that age. And it usually comes down to a skating ability, and whether or not they stay in the frame it comes down to their ability to catch an edge and an ability to understand where the net is behind them and little details like that. And he's got that. So that's why I really like Saarinen. I had him as my number 4 ranked goaltender. So he's definitely up there in terms of one of the first names that you'll see off the board. If a team's really high on him, you could even potentially see him move up even higher, because like I said, he's got the details like tracking and skating that you look for as ability that he'll be able to carry over to the next level. And yeah, I think he's not playing at the highest level right now with the U20 league in Finland, but I don't think there'd be much apprehension to a team, going after him because he's got the frame, and like I said, he's got all the things on the checklist that I look for in a guy that's able to make that jump to the next level. He's one of the more exciting names on the list.
We're going to finish off my conversation with Greg about goalie prospect in just a second, but first I've got to tell you all about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, so you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or you're going to get your money back. With eBay Motors, you're going to burn rubber, not cash. They've got all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Fit eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to US customers. Yeah. We talked a little bit about kind of Russian goalies and how there's a lot of good ones moving through. I did have to Google this guy just to make sure that he wasn't that he wasn't related to Evgeny Nabokov, because
Yes.
I don't know that my heart could have coped with him having draft eligible children. Ilya Nabokov is playing in Magnitogorsk right now. He's third on their list of European goalies. What can you tell me about him?
Well, I'll break your heart first and to let you know that Brizgalov has a goalie up for this year.
I did find that, so and I was like, you know
you
what?
are getting old.
I'm just not going to deal with that.
You are getting old.
It's him. It's Jarome McGinley. It's Saku Koivu's son, I believe, is draft eligible this year, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not emotionally prepared to handle any of this. So
I do a lot of work in the BCHL, and there's always like pro kids coming through the teams there, and it's some of the names that come through. It's like, how does that guy have a kid already playing junior? Like, that
this guy's 25. Sense. How does he have an 18-year-old son?
Anyways, Ilya Nabokov, yes, not related to Evgeny. He is the third-ranked European goalie, but he's a fourth-year eligible goaltender.
Oh, interesting.
And so he is aged compared to some of the other guys in this draft.
The oldest man alive.
I am not a huge fan of taking guys later in their draft eligibility. I'm more on getting on the ground floor of a guy who you can build up, rather than the move to take Nabokov would be more just to secure his rights from the KHL, I would assume. Because otherwise you can just outright sign him right now. He's that age where you can just go out and get him, which makes more sense in my eyes. If you want to be a team that goes out and just signs the guy next year, like that to me would make sense. He's intriguing enough of a prospect to do that, but to have him as that high, obviously to have him that high ranked, there's some buzz around him. There's some teams that are looking to secure his rights that will probably draft him in this year's draft. But why? It seems like such a low reward, low risk move to me. Like, honestly, like I said, as a guy you could potentially just sign out of the KHL, to take a guy in his fourth year of eligibility to get his rights. Yeah, I guess, but he's similar to like an Antti-Ranta style, smaller goaltender, likes to jump around. The highs are high, the lows are low, but the highs are really high when he's on, right? He tracks the puck really well. He's got some of those bloated numbers playing in the KHL. He's got a really good save percentage. So I think that jumps off the page to a lot of people, and for a guy who's a little bit smaller, jumps around, he does stay in the frame pretty well. But he's older. Like, every time I watch clips on him, I'm thinking in the back of my head, like he's
what, 21 years old?
22 soon. Like, it's just like, he should be like that. Like he's like college aged, right? Like, this is what I'm college goalies. This is what I'm wanting to see. So it's very tough to kind of slot him in where he goes with guys that are first year eligible and find out where he goes. But if a team does take him, that's what you're getting. You're getting a, low risk.
It's wild to have a fourth year eligible goalie ranked third. Like, can you imagine if they had a fourth year eligible forward ranked like even in the top 10 on like, I remember when the Blue Jackets drafted Igor Chidakov, he was an overager. Yeah. And they drafted him like 20th or 21st overall, and the entire world was like, what are they doing? What is going on?
Second year eligible,
it does seem wild to be.
Second year of eligibility is just becoming a thing for skater. Like, they're just starting to take guys in their second year as more of a common thing. But yeah, you do see it with goalies every so often. Like, we've seen a couple of goalies re-enter the draft. Like, Frederik Andersen was drafted in his, I think, fourth year eligibility because it was his second time through the process.
Yeah.
So it kind of a weird.
Thomas Milic, I think, is
Yeah,
he was drafted in his third year of eligibility.
Yeah, I think, and there's a couple. Mathis Russo, the guy who started for Team Canada at the World Juniors, he's also third year eligible, also appearing on a lot of people's lists suddenly because there's obviously buzz around it. Like there's obviously teams that are talking about it in order for Nabokov to be placed on a list like this. But yeah, in terms of my personal opinion, I don't understand the move behind doing something like that.
Yeah. Let's talk about one more goalie, and then we'll see if there's anyone on your list that we haven't covered. Petteri Rimpinen is a name that I keep hearing, and usually in good context, but I don't know a ton about him. Beyond the fact that again he's Finnish and is again fairly high save percentage, another shorter goalie. He is pretty far down. I can't actually find him.
Well, he's one that I've still yet to really dig into, and he's playing in the Métis League out in Finland, so it's very difficult to judge. It's kind of similar to judging like a high school, U.S. high school kid. That you really got to take into consideration the types of shots that they're facing and the amount of time they have to get set up. So it's very difficult. But he's on my list to dig into more. So I've obviously heard from other people some things.
I was thinking about because Ryan Miller, I believe, was drafted out of high school.
There's usually at least 2 or 3 every year drafted out of high school, which some have the percentage isn't high on them panning out, but usually it's just
you remember the ones that work because they're always the story, but you don't hear about the ones that don't work.
San Jose took a really high pick on a high school kid a while back, Robinson, and he never ended up working out. So I think a few teams are scared. But then you look way back in the day, and Barrasso came right out of high school and was rookie of the year. So yeah, it's I think people are still clinging to the glory days a little bit when they're taking goalies out of high school, but they're just so difficult to judge. And a lot of those high school goalies will end up going college route, and then we're seeing a bunch of those college goalies get signed now once they're done their college career. Yeah, you wait and see if they turn into anything, and then
again, low risk potential.
Yeah, a lot of these guys were high end high school kids that probably could have been drafted, but they just ended up going the college route. And now they're 24 and looking pretty good. We're just going to sign them right out of college. That's generally the route for the high school kids, but you do see a few get drafted.
Yeah, for sure. Is there who? So I think we've talked about 3 of your top 4 guys on the list. Who's the 4th guy? Who have we not talked about? Who have I looked over?
Eemil Vinni is the one that he's the 2nd ranked European goalie. I have him ranked as the 2nd. He's another guy playing in the Métis League in Finland, but he's a little bit bigger. He's 6'2" frame, a little bigger than Leenders, the number 1 ranked guy that I have. So he's got that going for him in terms of if he wants to be the number 1 goalie off the board. But he is just he's a bit active, but he shows to me that he has a extremely good IQ of reading the play and just understanding how it's going to develop and where he needs to be. It's beyond his years in terms of his, setting up his positioning in a way to take the best percentage, of, okay, this is how it probably is going to pan out. That's usually an area that takes a long time for goalies to develop because you need to see various different scenarios and understand, the guy's got a puck in that kind of position in that corner and there's a guy there. This is how it might turn out. It's just sort of the way your brain works. You just pick it up over time and you understand more and more situations. It's how you get good at anything, really. You just do it over and over again and you understand different situations. And, for him to have that at this age already shows, it's working on another level. He's got something that other goalies strive to have. So I think he's one to look at. And then it's the package of having all the details as well. And he's very good on his post integration, extremely good down in the butterfly, catching an edge, moving left to right while in the butterfly, right up there with Leenders in terms of, how refined that movement is. And his transitions off the post are extremely clean. So like I said, he checks a lot of those boxes in terms of what you like to see. Plus he's got that extra edge of having the IQ and understanding and my favorite goalie coach and one of my idols growing up, Mitch Korn, used to always he called it connecting the dots. And it's something that goalies have that he coached Dominic Hasek in Buffalo. And he said that's when he sort of started to come to this understanding of what that was all about. And it's just some goalies have the ability to almost play the situation in their head before it happens and know what, okay, I need to be sliding in this direction because it's going to go there. Like they just have that ability to understand and read situations, and their brain can put it together and connect those dots quicker than other people. And you need to do it at such a quick level at the NHL level because everything happens so fast that becomes the biggest kind of attribute and whether you're good or not is whether how quickly you can connect those dots. And he said one time he was watching Hasek and it was, you could see the guy was winding up at the point and Hasek was already setting up to his glove side, even though the shot looked like it was going to go to his blocker side because it hit a shin pad and then ended up going to his glove side. And Hasek was waiting there with his glove out because he could see like, oh, it's going to go bing, bang. Like it's just, he just had that brain working on another level that other people couldn't even come close to. So it's,
goalies don't make sense.
No,
like even
so
as someone who is a goalie, we don't make sense.
But it's just that, you know, it's not psychic ability, speed, but it's just like, the processing speed of their brain is so good. And he has that. And that's the one super exciting thing about Vinny that I have him ranked so high is because of this draft class. I think he's the best goalie in that regard.
Let's finish up because I've kept you way longer than I meant to. The Blue Jackets, as it stands right now, I believe will be drafting 4th overall, and then they won't draft again until I want to say 36th overall. Leenders is your number 1 guy.
Yep.
Do they take him at 36? Like, should they take him at 36? If they call you and they're like, "Hey, we're thinking about taking a goalie at 36. Should we take Leenders?" Is that like, would you say yes?
That would be an acceptable range. I would 100%. Like I said, he has first round talent, but whether or not another team is going to outbid you for him or not, you know, if he's your number 1 ranked guy, then 36 would absolutely be a spot that I would take him in. But I don't know when their next pick after that is because it might be probably too late to get him in there, right? So
I think they have another 2nd round pick right now, but no, I couldn't tell you off the top.
You can always shift around. That's why it's so hard to gauge too, because you can always trade up and down. The draft day is so chaotic where it's difficult to know exactly where they're going to slot in. But it just comes to like teams will have their guy is essentially what it comes down to from scouts that I know have worked at draft tables and stuff. There'll be the goalie scout and he'll have his guy and he'll be pushing hard every time they have their draft pick coming up. We need to take him. And it's just how hard he can push for his guy essentially. And,
unless you're Montreal, in which case you just take all of
them. and if you think someone will push hard enough for Leenders that high in the draft, then you jump ahead of them and get them a few picks ahead because that's when you're going to grab them. And there absolutely is a value to taking high-end goalies. I know people think goalies are riskier to take or whatever, but we've crunched the numbers at InGoal. We've looked over it. Goalies fail, at a very similar rate to players in terms of the high-end guys. If you're taking guys in the top 5 ranked, you're very likely getting at least an NHL goaltender, and that's extremely likely. Even just as likely as taking a player in the top 10. Like people have this distorted view of goalies not panning out because there's so many prime examples of the guy that just didn't work out. But percentage wise, if you take a top ranked goaltender, you are extremely likely, just as likely as you hit on a skater. So if you're looking for a goalie, yes, take the best ranked goalie that you can possibly find in an appropriate area that you think they'll be off the board.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like I know way more about goaltending and goalie prospects than I did an hour ago. If people want to learn more about goaltending, if they want to kind of read some of your work, where can they find you and your stuff online?
Well, all my goalie writing is on Elite Prospects. So if you go to EP Rinkside, I do all the goalie scouting for they did a bunch of free agency write-ups recently for the one that was just released is all the European free agent names. And we also did one for NCAA and for the CHL. So I write about all the goalies that are potentially going to be signed out of each of those leagues. That was our latest endeavor. But we also do all the draft rankings as well. So I am their lead goalie scout for every goalie that's going to be on the list. And they release a huge draft guide at the end of the season leading into the draft that has full breakdowns of every single player. They do mock drafts and have intense scouting on each player ranked into the 150s. So and then I come in with all the goalies that are going to be ranked. So it's quite the group effort we have over there. But if you're looking to learn a lot more about these prospects and get just sort of an independent look at these guys and just hear from a bunch of people that talk to a lot of people in the industry about these prospects and kind of gather all their information in one place, then EP Rinkside is the place to go. It's we're pretty proud of what we can do over there.
Yeah, I do love my yearly sitting down with the Elite Prospects draft ranking guide and just like sitting there for 2 hours with it. So can endorse
The meetings,
for...
the Zoom meetings that they have are like, it's crazy. I think they released some of the footage of it, and it's just, oh man, it's something to behold for sure. It's I don't know how they organize all their thoughts into one document, but they somehow do it.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Thanks for coming to hang out and talk goalies with me today. This has been
appreciate it.
We are going to take a look at the Blue Jackets lineup ahead of the game against the Avalanche tomorrow night. And we're also going to take a quick peek at some Blue Jackets prospects starting their postseason pushes. That's going to be coming up on tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making us your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTEI. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticism, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.